Welcome to the Speaking of Jazz podcast series with Manny Kellough, in association with Music Tribes Unite News. Now let's get started.
So happy and honored to have you. I am not going to do a lot of talking because I just want you to share with the guests some, how you got started, where you came from, and just relax. It's about having fun, laugh, talk, and here we go, man. Tell me about where Harold Jones started and your influences.
Well, I was down in Richmond, Indiana, and we didn't know much about music there except for our two radio stations. And I got to meet and hang out with some guys there that were hip jazz cats. Drummer named Joe Hunt.
Okay.
And sax player named Paul Plummer. And the leader of the pack was a guy named John Pierce. He was a saxophone player. He played a great deal like Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
And that style. But he was kind of like raising us young guys in that area on this music, because I never heard a Bird until the day he died. And I think it was 56. And I was in a car with these hip cats, and here were these guys had tears in their eyes. and I said, well, damn, who is this Bird? So I jumped deep in, and I'm still that jumping ever since that day. And that was probably in the car in 56 coming home from high school.
Okay.
Yeah. These guys would take me around. They'd have jam sessions at different houses, different cats' house. And until one neighbor complained, then we wouldn't go back for a month or so. Because jazz back then, even with melody, was avant-garde to the average person next door.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So anyway, we were jamming around there. Joe Hunt took me to Indianapolis, and that's where I got to play and sit in for him in the Dave Baker Big Band. And that was back when Dave had Larry Ridley, Freddie Hubbard.
Oh.
And yeah, he had a bunch of good guys. And Mingo Jones on bass. It was a bunch of good Indianapolis cats.
Yeah.
And so Joe took me there, and I got to do that. Now I'm still not able to drive, and so they needed a drummer one night to play with Wes Montgomery, and my mom drove me over there from Richmond. Now, it was only 60 miles, but back in those days there was only one highway, US 40, and we were averaging 50 to 40 miles an hour. And it'd take a couple of hours to get there, it seems like. And it was a place in Indianapolis called the Hubbub.
Okay.
and I was so young, I had to sit in the car outside the door. Well, I must have went in and set up the drums. And then I had to sit in the car outside the door, and I was just doing homework because my mom had brought me. So that was going to happen. And when they got ready to go up on the jam to play, Wes Montgomery and them, they'd call me in, and I'd come right around the doorway and right up on the stage, and we'd start playing. So I never got close to anybody then.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I ever saw a room packed full of people with a dance floor, and even on the side. And everybody in the room, they were going up and down at the same time. I mean, that was Wes Montgomery, boy. It was like you see some of the rock and roll concerts now.
Yeah,
when they get all their members gone. Well, that Wes was one of the first ones I ever saw get that going. So this was about 56, 55, and going on into 57. And that was almost my transition year because I graduated in 58. And I had this scholarship to go up to Chicago to the American Conservatory of Music. So I went up there on this full scholarship, and it was in percussion.
Yeah.
And we didn't know until I got there They said, well, what is your major instrument? And I said, the drum set. Well, they said the drum set is not a legitimate instrument.
Get out of here.
Now, that's 1958 in the American Conservatory of Music. And the drum set was not considered a legitimate instrument because you had a makeup of so many things. You know, the cymbals, snare, bass drum. So they always had one player for each one of those things. But in jazz, one guy was doing it all. So anyway, after about 2 years, oh, by the way, so I had to come up with a major. Well, what did my teacher do? I think my teacher came up with marimba. I mean, I know he did. He came up, I was a muster marimba major. And I got pretty good at bass parts, you know, just walking the bass line for them to run all up and down the keyboard. And it got me through. And the other thing I had to do was you had to play piano. And you had to maintain a B+ average to keep the scholarship.
Okay.
Now, I had never played piano before in my life. And I'm 18 years old and I'm hearing this one. Well, I was staying at a YMCA, which was about 2 blocks from there. And when I went back to the Y, I just found they had a little room and up in that the YMCA building somewhere that had a piano. And I probably practiced 6 hours a day minimum.
On the piano?
For the piano, learning the scales and whatnot. And I passed that, man. I was able to play like Bach 2-part inventions back then. And that's about as high up as I got. And I realized then, I said, man, this music education, you have to learn all these different instruments, but you're master of none. That's what I was thinking. So I went back to the professor, the head of the department at school. I said, well, why isn't the drum set a legitimate instrument? And after they had a conference meeting with the teachers at the school, the answer was there was nothing written for the drum set to be a legitimate piece that they could judge you by on how good you were.
Really?
So I went and wrote a piece. And it was for the drum set, tambourine, and triangle. I tell you, I was studying percussion so much back then, I had to study a year on triangle. And we read the triangle, we read out of a snare drum book.
For the triangle?
The triangle. Anything you can play on the snare drum with 2 hands, you can play with a triangle with 1 hand. Because there was the up and the down. So, dunk, 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 dunk. Yeah, we read out of a snare drum book to play triangle for a year. So anyhow, when I wrote this piece, I was serious. He was going to be in my piece. But I said, I'll put all this time in on triangle and tambourine. Same thing with the tambourine. You can play any snare drum part on that tambourine by having it down there on your knee and getting the double slaps and all that.
Yeah.
So if you're out there looking for something new to do in this pandemic time, you can try playing the snare drum part on tambourine or on triangle. And anyway, I wrote that piece. They accepted it, and the drum set was then considered a legitimate instrument, at least at the American Conservatory. Of course, they got that to happen. About 5-10 years later, school went bankrupt. And that school doesn't exist anymore. So anyway, I was gigging around Chicago, man. Chicago was jam swinging. This is the late 50s, early 60s. And every club had music in it. And man, it was so, I can't begin to say all the different stories because I was in the blues joints. I remember Roosevelt Sykes. He was the original Honey Dripper. he heard me play at some jam session and found out I had a station wagon. And he literally said to all the boys in front of me, he said, "Hey, man, he got a station wagon. We can use him." I didn't know, man. So, I mean, I'd go out to play these gigs with him, man. They were up northern Indiana, up there at those, I forget, but they were like strip clubs in northern Indiana. I used to have to rehearse with the strippers on the motions they were going to make, on the kind of tom-tom beats they wanted. Now I'm only 18, and 19 is the best, you know. So anyway, I called that a good gig, even though I went to work at night. But I'd leave my house and go around, pick up the bass player and pick up the sax man and pick up Roosevelt Sykes, who played piano. Then we'd drive out over to Indiana. And I mean, by then it was 9 o'clock and we'd play, I don't know, I think we played till 2 or 3 in the morning. Because when we
I remember them days.
Yeah. Now,
as a matter of fact, I just did a gig like that Saturday night. I started playing at midnight and finished at 2 a.m. Haven't done that in years.
Well, Chicago's law was 4 o'clock was closing time. On Saturday, 5 o'clock. Now, on Sunday, they opened at 6. So if you could buy your drinks at 5 o'clock that you were going to drink for an hour, they just close and lock the door, and then they reopen them again at 6 o'clock.
Really?
Now that was Chicago. But anyway, man, I had a lot of fun in Chicago. That's when I had this little group with Herbie Hancock, Reggie Willis, a bunch of cats there, and that's when I was with Eddie Harris, and we did Exodus. That was a good band that he had. Willie Pickens on piano.
Okay.
And who was later with Elvin Jones. And there was Jody Oreo, who just passed away. And they had several different bass players. Bill, can't remember Bill's last name now. But anyway, that was Eddie Harris. And then that's when I did the Paul Winter thing. We got to go to Washington, be the first jazz band in the White House, which was a high honor.
Very good.
And yeah, man. And they've got one of my drum sets in the Black History Museum, the museum in Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian, the black one. Yeah. They've got the drum set that was in the White House there.
I'm going to go there and look for it.
I am too, man.
Now,
yeah.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
I'm very interested. Well, I really kind of know, but I want you to tell our guests, how did you become known as the drummer for the singer's drummer? Well,
that was literally because, singers, and if they start to get famous, they make so much money off of their royalties that they don't work steady. They may work a month or 6 weeks and then take 3 months off. So if you're a regular gigging backline musician, you'd have to jump on the next ship leaving port.
Okay.
And that's what I did in Chicago. And because I could read, they weren't afraid to accept me to do it on the first time. Although a lot of the music back in those days was so poorly written that it didn't help that much. I mean, it all reminds me of the guy who joined Duke's band, and he on the trumpet chair, and he got up there and he said, "Well, where's my part on this song?" He couldn't find his chart, and the other trumpet player said, "Well, haven't you heard the record?" So anyway, you learn to play by ear a great deal. But if you can't read, where are you going to go on that very first time? So I highly recommend it. Drummers are about the only ones that can play their instrument without knowing how to read first. I mean, when I think of the other instruments, they all have to piano. He has to figure out what middle C is or where. But drummers, and they don't learn till some of them don't learn till later what the rudiments are. Yeah. Our rudiments were meant to make both hands equal. And I don't care what grip you play. Although I'm telling you, I grew up on the traditional grip, but seeing the way the drums are played, the way the guys are playing today, the match grip is more fitted for it, because that traditional grip came from outdoors with the marching bands. They came inside and they just kept it. And on the drum set, we learned to work with it. Yeah. But because I know whenever I want to play a heavy thing on that floor tom, I turn my stick over. And I learned from a vaudeville teacher how to twirl a stick. And you know what? It was only so you could actually get to the thick end. And that was the only reason we learned to twirl a stick. There was never for show, although some guys practice the twirl more than the notes,
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, I forgot where I was going with this. These guys. So anyhow, playing around Chicago, and I was playing there was a Freddie Hexter big band and Freddie Wacker big band. Ernie Hexter was out here. But Fred Wacker, his family was the family in Chicago that they named Wacker Drive after, right along the Chicago River. And you know what? He liked the race cars, and he liked to have his big band of music. I think I heard a story that the family kind of disinherited him. Thought maybe he was a little losing it or something. But he was a great guy as far as hiring the musicians and playing the dances around Chicago. Then I did another big band, Morris Ellis.
What was that name again?
Morris, Morris,
yes.
Ellis.
Morris Ellis.
Like Ellis. Chicago. Yeah. And back then, early 60s, I was doing gigs at sororities and fraternities with Sun Ra. He had like a little 5-piece group, and we were playing dances, and everybody wore a coat and a tie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a regular blue suit, white shirt and tie, and that was with Sun Ra. And I never knew until way later after he went to New York, and his band was called the Orchestra. So I was with some of these guys on their trips out. One of the great saxophone players, Bunky Green. I think he's still alive down in Florida, Miami. He was teaching down there at the school. Great man, and they're still alive. But anyway, Chicago, man, was jumping, and you could jam all night.
Yeah.
Gene Ammons, Sonny Stitt, Johnny Griffin. Yeah. The Thugs.
I love him. I love him.
I'm telling you, between Sonny Stitt, Sonny Stitt and Johnny Griffin. Now, if you play a jam session with them, man, one song could be an hour and a half. I'm not exaggerating. Now, the song would be about 45 minutes long.
One song?
One song. The song would be about 45 minutes to an hour long. Then they would tag it for 30 minutes. They would just go back and forth and these guys, man, they cracked me up. The tag was a half hour long. And that's where I got a bad bladder. So I'm telling you, that was one song. Then they'd have to do a ballad, and that was 15, 20 minutes long, and only one guy would play. So, yeah, that was the days back then, man. I mean, you had to have the chops or you would die. Yeah.
I want to jump in. Let's talk a little bit about where I first met you. Harold, I first started listening to you when I was in high school, and that was when you was with the Count Basie band. Now, I still listen to that to this very day, the Count Basie band. Let's talk a little bit about how you got with the Basie band, because I got some more people to ask you about. So I want to know a little bit about the Basie band, and we're going to move on. Maybe talk about Natalie Cole, Sarah Vaughan.
Okay.
I'm listening. I'm all ears, man.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with Basie, I got that gig because he was doing a New Year's Eve gig from the Empire State Building in New York, like he did every year from Rose Room. Anyhow, I was in the New York in the Empire State Building in the basement, and there was going to be a half a dozen singers, coast to coast, and there wasn't a drummer available that could sight read in New York City at the time, because all the guys that could read were working. And Rufus Jones, who had been with the Basie band, he went to the Far East with Duke, and he was over there. So they called me, man, anyway, from Chicago. I left home on Christmas Eve. Yeah, that cost one family. And I went to New York. What was going to be that 2-week gig turned out to be 5 years. Then, yeah. So I got to meet a lot of the singers back then that I never would have got to meet. Judy Garland, Sarah Vaughan, Ella, Tony, and that's how I got back with Tony, because Tony and I were playing together I was going out with him, I want to say in the 70s from New York. But we just do things like fly from New York down to Miami, do the Copacabana for the weekend, then fly back to New York. Then he'd be off a month, So I was doing that with him, but I kept gigging so much. And once they had me there in New York with Basie's band, I got on his bus one place, and it went out this way, man, and never come back in the other way. And by this time, Tony had another band there in New York. But so anyhow, I was with Basie for that while. And then when I left Basie, I was out there in L.A. I saw all those drummers, man, making big bucks. And I said, and at that time, I was a top paid guy in Basie's band. And I was making something like $600 a week, really? paying my hotel bill and sending money home. So it turned out very little money home. But anyway, so I decided, well, I need to go on and make some money with the drum stuff. Well, of course, when you get there, you got to wait for somebody to die. So while I'm waiting, I got a gig with Sammy Davis that lasted a couple of weeks or a month. I got a gig with Ella that lasted a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe about 6 months to a year. But I knew she was good. Yeah. And then I was gigging around there with people like Carmen McRae. You need to wear a hard hat when you did that gig. And then there was there was Nancy Wilson. Yeah. Man, she had the best bands. I mean, one time her two horn players were Harold Land and Blue Mitchell. Yes. And her other singer was Joe Williams. Yeah. But we had a good band. Yeah, I can't remember my man's Phil. Phil Wright was on piano. Okay. Very few people know him. New Yorker, came out of New York. Really good and tasty. Anyway, yeah, so I was around there with those kind of singers. And then in 80, Sarah Vaughan called. I can't remember who was with her or why or what. But I went out and did a gig with her. And that was
how was it working with Sarah?
And man, every night you went to work. If the gig was 2 hours long, that was the shortest 2 hours of the day. I mean, the music was never the same. Even if it was the same song, it was never the same. She wasn't going to phrase it the same.
Yeah.
She was, yeah, it was like just bliss. I mean, it was with Sarah, you never knew what to expect. So you stayed on your toes.
I was just getting ready to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stayed up on your toes. And she was fantastic, man. I mean, she would give you the shirt off her back. But then a year later, she'd ask for the $2 that was in the shirt pocket.
You remember that $2 I gave you?
Yeah. The sassy. That's why she had two names, and she could be both. I was never the brunt of sassy. She loved the musicians, but other people would start to annoy her outside. Yeah.
So how about this is a lady that I met because you put me in contact with her, Marlena Shaw.
Great singer. There's another one. She's a great singer. I mean, man, when she sang with the Basie band, it was swinging. I mean, she could stand up and talk with Basie. Sound like two rappers back then in that day. Yeah. She could talk. She could talk the music and she could sing the music. Yeah,
I don't know if you remember, but you introduced me to her, and I got a gig from her.
Oh, okay.
Years ago, man. Yeah.
You were in Vegas.
Huh?
You mean in Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah, she's still there.
Yeah.
You know, she had one of those situations, a hard one, that I think her son died. I can't remember the reason. But, you know, she said, why should your son ever die before you do? And I said, yeah, I can dig it. And so she just didn't want to come out and deal with whatever, the public and the people and the situations. But
the time I met her, she was a very nice person.
Oh, she is. She is.
She loved to cook and have you to her house to eat.
That's right. That's right. I forgot. Yeah, I'm going to have to call her. I'm going to have to give her a call. I was calling the older ones first, but she's getting up there now. Yeah, but a swinger. She never got popular. I don't know why. I think she tried to cross over in that music, but that didn't quite work. So I don't know what the reasons were. She wasn't more popular, really.
Sweet lady.
Yeah.
Well, now I gotta ask you. We hit on a lot of funny things, but what was when you were traveling throughout the years? What was some of the most funniest things and situations that you ran into?
Yeah, man. Well, for me to tell a story, I tell it like they're the guys that tell a story. Said, "What do you think of New York?" Oh man, it's a hustle city. It's a hustle. You wouldn't like it there. Don't go there. Well, what do you think of Cincinnati? He said, "Oh man, it's the greatest city in the world." That means he had a girlfriend there. You know. So if you ask me, what did you like? Well, my cities were about the same. If you had family, relatives, or close friends in a city, you look forward to that. Otherwise, it was just another gig.
Yeah.
Although with the people I was with, man, we got to play some of the greatest halls in the world, and that's one thing I can't overlook. Because I feel very rich and fortunate to have played in most of those great halls. And man, people need to come back out in a couple of years and hear in those great halls what real music sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about I'm moving around along because
do it.
I'm just moving around. I got so much to ask you, but we how time goes. But what about man? Tony Bennett. Let's talk about Tony Bennett, and then I want you to tell me about Natalie Cole. Let's do Natalie first.
Natalie was a sweetheart.
Yeah.
Now I never really met her dad, but I knew his ballet guy, Sparky, because when Nat died, she wanted Sparky to road for her. But he was getting kind of old. He didn't want to travel that much anymore and whatnot. And he did for a while, but Sparky was his name. And I want to get his name in there in the archives. But Natalie was like, I'm assuming her father, she was a true musician. She wanted to be one of the cats in the band. And there was nothing. When she went on tour, she had her tour bus for the stars. She had the tour bus for the crew, and she had a tour bus for the band.
Really?
Yeah. Which was.
And when you say the band, you speaking of the rhythm section?
Yeah.
Primaries that traveled all the time.
The primaries that traveled with her were all the slick as hippest cats. I mean, it was Jim Huart on bass, John Cudini on guitar.
Yes.
In the beginning, I know it was George Gaffney on piano. It was Lanny Morgan on alto sax, the lead. It was, we didn't have a lead trombone player. We had a lead trumpet, Dave Trigg, who is still playing lead in New York and killing it. But he's in New York. Anyhow, she carried us guys. So it was plenty of room on the bus. You know, everybody had their own.
That fantastic the conductor.
Charles Floyd. I don't think we could have made it swing without a conductor like him, because he understood the classical approach, the musical approach. Because we had an orchestra in most of the cities.
Right.
And he could rehearse the orchestra, and he could talk to the second chair cello and tell him what was wrong. You know, he was that good. But he had the classical approach, he had the swing approach, and he knew when he got that engine going over there on that swing, man, just put your head down and just enjoy it. And he did that, man. He made everybody feel relaxed.
Yeah.
Because of him. But super guy and a great conductor, man. Yeah. I can't say enough good about him, man.
Is he still around? Is he still conducting?
Yes, he is still around. I know he just missed getting the Boston Pops gig, but that was about 10 years ago when they got that new guy, which I always thought he looked like I can't say something negative. But anyhow, he's around conducting different orchestras. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's move along to the man.
Tony. I got to say, Tony is the nicest one, and he puts his money where his mouth is. I mean, this guy took care of us musicians, and if we weren't working during the week, we had a retainer. So if you had a little club date at home, you wouldn't mind having to cancel it to go out with Tony. Yeah. Now that was for openers. Then we got paid for doing shows, and we got paid the right amount of money, and we got the retirement money put in. What do you call it? Benefits and different things. But Tony is the first one. If it hadn't been for him, I would be in the bread line today.
Really?
I mean, well, because I'm telling you, Sarah Vaughan, she had 5 managers in 10 years. So every other year she changed once they found out where the guy was stealing from. And Count Basie, his manager was an accountant. And I think he might still be in prison. He was taken out for everything, Social Security, health and welfare, and this and that, and he didn't put anything in.
Really?
Really, yeah. And they found that out, man. And they put him in prison. This was like 10 years ago, I'm going to say that. I don't know who I can ask if he's still in or what the latest was on him. One other guy, Johnny Williams, and Oscar Bashir, about the only two guys I know alive when I was there. But that's two. And anyway, so no, man, we didn't get paid, man. We didn't get paid that much. We were paying a lot of our tariffs, except I will say, Sarah insisted that we stay in the same hotel she stayed in, which was always better than Motel 6 around the corner.
Yeah.
And she did that. Basie, he tried to get us in Holiday Inn, and he would stay there too. So they were both of the same kind on believing in the band to a point. Yeah. And like Basie rode right on the band bus. And I remember after he couldn't do it, or after he was gone, they went and got I forget who they got to front the band. Cab Calloway.
Cab Calloway.
Yeah. Now, Cab complained, his first complaint was, oh, I don't ride on the bus with the boys. I need my own car. Yeah, with a driver. So that was his first complaint. So that was my first impression of Cab Calloway. But anyway, so that's how these guys were different in the same mode. And Tony, I mean, he's faithful to the cats that he knows were good back then. People don't know much about Tony's personal life because he was actually in the parade with Martin Luther King and Harry Belafonte.
Yes.
Yeah, not everybody knows that. And he has purposely kept his show stealth, under the radar, on any kind of political things, knowing that he believes in Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't wear it on stage. Yeah. Yeah, but Tony, man, is one of the greatest individuals to come along, because he had to cross that line, that racial line barrier, the other way. And I mean, you know, and he never really was a member of the Rat Pack. Not really. But he hung with all of them. They were all tight, his buddies. Yeah. And he just didn't want to do things like what might be commercial, like be in a movie, even though he was in several. But I forget who he said told him, with your talent, just stay in the singing career. I forget who he said that was. Yeah, but really a nice guy, man, I'm going to say. And we all have our moments.
But of course, yeah.
That's
right.
Yeah.
As they say, we all have our bad hair days.
Yeah.
Well, getting on down to we start to wind up our little visit here. I know you have a fantastic book out entitled Harold Jones, the Singer's Drummer. And that's your latest project now. Fantastic, man. I've read the whole book.
All right, Manny. Thank you.
I thank you for giving it to me and autographing it to me. That's very special to my heart, man. Thank you.
All right, man. And
I'd like to encourage all of our listeners to go out and get Harold Jones's book. Again, it's called Harold Jones, the Singer's Drummer. You don't want to leave this out of your library. Go get it. Harold Jones, the Singer's Drummer. Now, if you had to talk to some of our young players today, what kind of advice could you give them? You know, I always try to be a mentor, you know, again, copying you, trying to do what you do. Tell me what would you recommend to me and everybody else?
Well, you gotta practice every day. it doesn't matter how good you are or how old you are. You gotta practice every day. Now, practice could be a maximum of 5 or 10 minutes if you go in and work on something, or just work to get your hands to sound and matched and good on a pad with a few rudiments just to make sure you keep your hand there. And then just go in, and if it's one of those days you got a practice day to do anything, you go in the room and you're practicing, and it seems like you were there 10 minutes, and you come out to get some water. You see that you were in there half an hour. I recommend you run right back in there. That means you were really getting something done.
Yeah.
You were, yeah. But if you were in there, I'm saying, did I say it right? Because if you're in there a half an hour and it seemed like 10 minutes, then you know you're getting something done. If you're in there for 10 minutes and it feels like a half an hour, I would suggest you just stop and take a break. And how long a break, I don't know yet. Yeah. Man,
again, I can go on and on and on because I'm feeling like we're just having a conversation and having fun because I'm so excited to be able to just be in front of you right now. I want to, from my heart to you, I want to wish you a very, very happy birthday. And I know you have a birthday coming up soon.
Yeah. Sure enough.
Well,
yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm about 8 years behind you.
Okay. Now I'm 80 and change.
I'm turning 74 this year, and this is my 61st year behind the drum set.
Whoa, okay, man.
Yeah. I'm getting there, man. I'm getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
All right, man. My next question, probably my last one, is I don't want it to be, but what is jazz?
Jazz, and nowadays, they had more than one kind of jazz. That's a very good question, because as far as everybody knows, it came out of New Orleans and it had that New Orleans beat. Yeah. When they had that funeral and whatnot,
The second line.
And yeah. And that came out of there. And then when Dizzy and Bird came through, they called it bebop, but it got into something like that. And then like right after that, the Basie and Dukes and Benny Goodman's had the swing bands, so that went on for a while. Then those guys like Bird and then Train, and throwing an Ornette Coleman somewhere. But all of these things are called jazz.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a rough term nowadays, because back when I was young, jazz was a bad name, and they called it was the devil's music, And so I say a lot of my friends that have passed away, I said they probably went to heaven because I was keeping the devil busy. Yeah, man. But there's something about swing. I got into that thing of swing. And I guess it's because listening so much to Art Blakey, Max Roach, the swing drummers back then. And I'll say Louis Bellson. And by the time then I got into maybe Buddy Rich. But I was a swing drummer back from the Kenny Clark, Papa Joe era. Yeah. So anyway, I got into that swing, and I kind of like that little pocket.
See, what you've done has rubbed off on me, because I believe in swinging and keeping that quarter note steady, man. And, one thing you told me was drums are supposed to be felt and not heard. And
there you go. Yeah,
that's the way I play. Just like you play, And then I'm still working on to be a Harold Jones to this very day. And I say that with pride, man. You know, people think just because you can get up and go dut, 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 that you're swinging, but you're not.
Yeah, right. But
again, you'd be surprised when I sit down behind the drum set and I have to play behind a vocalist, I say, well, how would Harold play this? And then, as you always say, less is always more.
Yeah.
Stay out the way.
Yeah. Don't step on the words.
That's right. You don't want to step on no roads, you get a thorn in your foot. Man, you know, do you have anything else you'd like to add? Because it's been an indeed pleasure, man.
Yeah, no, man, I tell you, if anybody can get the book and they want to read between the lines on anything, don't hesitate to give you a call to contact me, because I'm more than happy to talk about the road and things that we did to survive.
Do you have a website where people can contact you?
Well, no.
Okay.
I got all I have is my email and this phone number to text.
Okay.
But they could do it either way. And if they really want to get my attention, because I delete so much stuff.
Yeah.
Just in the subject matter, put in Count Basie.
That's what you told me.
Oh yeah, that's my secret code. Because I always check to see what's being said. If it says Count Basie.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for being a part of my life and allowing me to be in front of you and just be able to talk freely and sit down and laugh and have a good time. It means a lot to me. Now I'm ready to go out and swing. You know.
All right, Manny.
Make Harold proud.
All right, man. All right.
You take care of yourself. And again, man, here's to Harold Jones. Happy birthday, my brother. Happy birthday.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Right. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you for keeping jazz alive. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels, and all the links are in the podcast description. That's it for now.